Politeness often decides outcomes before facts are even considered. Politeness is not neutral in conversations where something is at stake. It lowers resistance by signaling safety while quietly shifting control. When someone stays overly agreeable, the other side relaxes and stops defending their position. This changes the power balance without announcing it. In practice, this means calm courtesy creates a false sense of fairness while direction is being set. People concede faster to those who sound reasonable and unthreatening. This is done by soft tone, patient pacing, and careful wording that appears cooperative. It shows up when someone says yes early and steers later. Once you notice that politeness moves decisions, you stop confusing it with kindness. Politeness works by making pressure feel voluntary instead of imposed. When someone stays polite while asking for something, refusal starts to feel socially costly. The listener begins managing impressions instead of evaluating the request. This shifts focus from what they want to what they look like declining. In practice, this means politeness converts a decision into a reputation risk. People comply to avoid appearing rude, difficult, or unreasonable. This is done by phrasing demands as favors and wrapping them in appreciation. The request sounds optional, but the social consequence is not. It shows up when someone says no and immediately explains themselves. The moment you hear justification appear, politeness has already applied pressure. Politeness hides authority by removing visible dominant signals. When authority is obvious, people prepare to resist or negotiate. When authority is polite, people assume equality that is not there. This lowers vigilance and delays boundary setting. In practice, this means polite authority gets more access before being questioned. Managers, officials, and experienced negotiators use courtesy to bypass challenge. They sound collaborative while controlling timing, options, and outcomes. This is done by thanking instead of instructing and suggesting instead of directing. The listener feels respected and stops tracking who is actually leading. It shows up when decisions move forward without anyone agreeing explicitly. Politeness creates obligation without stating a debt. Small courtesies trigger a need to balance the interaction. The mind tracks fairness automatically and looks for ways to repay. This turns minor gestures into leverage. In practice, this means help is offered before anything is requested. Once accepted, the interaction is no longer neutral. The request that follows feels reasonable because something was already given. This is done by opening with favors, understanding, or flexibility. It shows up when someone says, "I owe you," after being accommodated. The obligation existed before they named it. Politeness is used to slow the other person while momentum is being built. Calm manners reduce urgency and make delays feel reasonable. While the listener waits, the polite speaker controls pacing and structure. This creates asymmetry without confrontation. In practice, this means one side appears patient while quietly advancing position. Deadlines soften, objections drift, and energy drops. This is done by acknowledging concerns without resolving them. The conversation feels active, but nothing is being decided by the listener. It shows up when meetings stay pleasant, but outcomes always favor one side. Politeness didn't pause the interaction, it redirected its speed. Politeness reframes resistance as a personal flaw. When someone stays calm and courteous, pushback starts to look emotional. The person resisting feels exposed for disrupting the tone. This shifts the issue from the request to their reaction. In practice, this means politeness makes disagreement feel inappropriate. People soften objections to restore social balance. This is done by responding to resistance with understanding instead of argument. The polite speaker appears mature, while the other feels defensive. It shows up when someone backs down and says it's not a big deal. The tone won before the point was discussed. Politeness disguises control by inviting participation instead of demanding it. When someone asks politely, it feels collaborative even when options are limited. The listener believes they are choosing, but the frame was already set. This reduces resistance because control is shared in appearance only. In practice, this means choices are offered after boundaries are fixed. The polite speaker presents two acceptable paths and waits. This is done by using language like whatever works for you while steering outcomes. The listener focuses on selecting rather than questioning the structure. It shows up when people feel involved but later realize there was no real alternative. Politeness didn't remove control, it concealed it behind consent. Politeness is used to extract information without triggering defense. People share more when they feel respected and not interrogated. Courtesy lowers the instinct to protect details. This opens access to motives, limits, and weaknesses. In practice, this means questions are wrapped in interest, not pressure. The listener talks freely because nothing feels at risk. This is done by affirming before asking and listening without correction. The polite speaker gathers leverage while appearing passive. It shows up when someone later uses details you forgot you revealed. The extraction happened while the interaction felt safe. Politeness is used to end interactions on someone else's terms. A calm, respectful close prevents last-minute resistance. The listener accepts the ending because it feels considerate. This locks outcomes in before objections can surface. In practice, this means summarizing decisions politely and moving to exit. The tone signals completion even if agreement was never given. This is done by thanking, affirming progress, and closing smoothly. The other person hesitates to reopen the conversation. It shows up when someone realizes too late that the moment passed. Politeness didn't conclude the discussion, it sealed it. Politeness is the final layer that makes manipulation invisible to memory. After the interaction, nothing feels forceful or wrong. The mind remembers calm exchange, not directional loss. This prevents retroactive resistance or correction. In practice, this means the outcome settles before it is reviewed. The person affected struggles to locate the moment control shifted. This is done by keeping everything pleasant from start to finish. There is no spike that signals intrusion. The result feels self-chosen even when it was not.